my live stream for games to look forward to or games that interest me in the month of August, I covered Grand Emprise 2, Poles Apart, a survival game from an indie developer, and it has a game that's already out. This game also has a demo. It looked pretty cool. You can see the screenshots here. Pretty interesting environments. You just go to multiple different worlds. It's a survival game. If you play one survival game, you know generally what you're going to get here. But the concept with all the varied environments looked pretty cool. It drops and it comes out mixed. I'm like, rough launch. What is it? Performance issues? No, no. It's a legitimate negative review brigade by morons. Now, I like to give you all like a really fun caveat. It's not an ad hominem if you call them something as an addendum. And that's an addendum. These people are just morons. So the main argument is it's a lazy asset flip. No, it's not a lazy asset flip. A lazy asset flip is that one zombie game that they legitimately just bought a bunch of stuff from the store, barely threw any coding behind, almost nothing in it worked. It was a complete buggy mess that crashed very frequently. This is not what Grand Emprise 2 is. Grand Emprise 2 is a fully functional game. It does use store-bought assets, but frankly, who cares? The store where they sell assets literally exists so developers can buy assets and then make a game with them. And then follow some commercial licensing agreement, yada, yada, yada. Now, let me explain all the systems that go into a game like a survival game. Let's just take a stone, right? So you buy the asset or you have someone make the asset. And then the graphics that go over the asset. Then you put it in the game. It's not that simple. A lot of people think that you just buy an asset, throw it into the engine, and boom, magically game happens. No. Okay, actually in like 20 years when the AI gets that good, that's probably how it's going to work. But that does not work like that yet. What you have to do is then you have to make sure it properly integrates into the system to not cause a lot of performance impact. Then you have to decide how it's going to spawn, what rate it's going to spawn at, what method you're going to use to spawn it in, how it's going to spawn in. Then you have to make sure that it has collision, if not like outright as in the player walks over it, as in it won't be spawning below the surface of your ground or inside other objects. Then you decide how long it's going to stay there, whether or not your game's going to register it being continuous. Because a lot of games, what they'll do as soon as the player moves away from an object, they'll despawn it, but it will remember like, okay, hey, I spawned an object here. The player did not pick up that object, but I'm not going to load it into the game because that would cause more processing power to be needed. And to save on processing power if your player is not around it or even looking directly at it, it will despawn. You could have it basically remember where stuff is, and a lot of survival games they do to a certain extent. But then a lot of other survival games, they will just respawn objects in sporadically. All that requires code. And then you have to have systems in place to keep track of the item. And inventory for the player. And then this has to interact with every other system you have. Then you have to have that interact with the crafting system. Then you have to have the crafting system not crash your game. Then you have to have the crafting system's items be usable without creating any code conflicts. And that's all in this game. This is not a lazy asset flip. This is a developer who used store-bought assets. There is nothing wrong with using store-bought assets. Because let me ask a very poignant question, which I asked in the discussion section. How is it more noble to pay a team of people to make assets custom for you than it is to go to a store and buy assets that are made by a developer who sells them commercially and then follow the commercial agreement? In both cases, you are paying other people to make assets for you. So how is it more noble to pay someone else, a whole team of other people, to make an asset than it is to go pay a commercial fee for an asset and then do whatever the licensing agreement requires? Realistically, people like Gamario, they're not going to be able to answer that question. But the developer did respond. And in his own admission, he is not responding very professionally. And I gave him some advice, which we'll get into a second. A minute, I should say. And he points out how this guy, he buys every last one of his games, doesn't really play it, and then leaves a negative review and refunds it. Okay, let's verify this. Did not really play it. Like, look, if you have 0.3 hours in a survival game, you did not play it. So bought it, played it a tiny bit, refunded it. Bought it, played it a tiny bit, refunded it. Bought it, played it a tiny bit. And this is not even this dev's game. And then refunded it. This guy has no positive reviews. And I could say, like, hey, look, I think my first review was negative, and because I just generally don't like writing reviews. So I'm not going to dunk on someone if they bought a game, it was absolutely bad, and then like, I generally don't leave reviews. I got to leave a negative review so that people don't make the mistake I made. That's one thing. But like the developer said, this does show a clear pattern where he is just buying the dev's games and then refunding it. And then being rewarded for, frankly, just complaining. I just realized something. A game is a blatant, lazy asset flip, quickly hacked together various unrelated Unreal Marketplace packages. Lazy asset flip. Dude, I think bro's using a fucking AI to write this stuff. No, that can't be. Some of these reviews have to be older than AI. Yeah, dude, when he wants to talk about being lazy asset flip, and yet he's lazily just rehashing the same review. It does not matter if a dev buys assets from the Unreal Store. That's what the Unreal Store is for. And the last accusation is he's deleting threads that are critical of the game, report bugs, or say it's a scam. Now, the dev admits, like, yeah, if you're saying call my game a scam, I'm deleting your thread. And that's his right. Look, I generally have a more laissez-faire approach to my comment section. It's something I've really carried over from my time when I ran a Facebook comment section, because I generally believe you attract your correct audience, the audience that really vibes what you have to say, and then they generally can argue with the dumb people or the people who are more vicious and attack you. Sadly, thanks to YouTube's algorithm, and screw me, that is not really manifested. Look, I'm more so laissez-faire. I've had to tell, like, twice, leave a sticky comment saying, hey, be polite. And I'm not telling people to be polite because I think they should be all nice to me. No. If you are too vulgar, YouTube removes your comment. Now, there are probably comments that got removed that I didn't have a chance to manually approve. And YouTube doesn't even tell me if they remove a comment, by the way. I find out when I go into comments, because if I sporadically will check comments through the comment section, I'll check the hold comments or held comments, and then I have to manually approve your comment. Generally, I approve every comment. I don't think I've had a not approve one comment. I may have, so I'm just going to leave myself that out there, but that's my general approach. But if I ran a discussion forum for my game, pretty much you'd have the power to say not whatever you want other than Marxism and yeah, I'm scamming people. Because technically, if I'm not scamming people, that's libel if it's in print and defamation if it's said aloud. Just saying. So you do have the right to actually defend yourself by removing that kind of stuff. And I don't think it's a big deal that the developer is removing threads, calling this game a scam, when it very clearly is not. As for him removing discussion threads off for criticism, my thread right here proves that's not true. I am not banned. And I offered the exact same thing I've said here. Hey, explain how it's more noble. And I defended that the views asked it for store, and then offered him some feedback that, not to be professional, but to be calm, collected. And that's really how you should go about responding to these people, because it looks really good PR wise. Because psychologically, even if you're right, if people see you acting emotionally, they generally put less stock in what you are saying. And that's why a lot of people will use the tactic of just riling you up until you literally explode. Because the moment you explode, you damage your social proof in an argument. Unless you manage your anger in a specific way that actually boosts your social proof. And that's a whole rhetorical technique stuff. And I'm not really familiar with rhetorical techniques in general, just pragmatic advice. So that's why we'll say, like, hey, if you're dealing with drama, explaining a controversial subject, or just in a discussion in general, be concise, be calm, be collected, and be precise. It's the best way to handle drama. It's the best way to handle discussion. And it's the best way to handle haters like this. And I gave him two great Stoic techniques I learned about from this audiobook I've been listening to: How to Think Like a Roman Emperor, talk about Marcus Aurelius. And the first K is your basic, hey, take stock of your emotional state. Because there was a classic Stoic who was on a ship, and it was in the middle of a violent storm. It was going to sink. When the guy saw him, he was terrified. And then later he was calm and doing things to ensure his survival. And when they both survived, they asked him, like, hey, what was that all about? The classic Stoic explained, like, hey, there's nothing wrong with being afraid when you're on a ship sinking in the middle of an extremely violent storm. That's reasonable. Letting that fear control you is unreasonable. So what he did is he let himself experience the fear for a second, because it's a natural response. You can't, suppress it. And then he rationalized it. He rationalized what his solution should be. And he took pragmatic steps to fix it. And you can use this same technique in your day-to-day life. And the second technique is to utilize the ideal. Like, imagine you have a very wise mentor, and that mentor is giving you pragmatic advice. He's evaluating what you're saying. Now, if you have a way older pragmatic mentor who's been there long enough, they'll understand while you're being emotional, and they will advise you against it. And I believe Marcus Aurelius's mentor did that quite a lot, much to Marcus Aurelius's conflagration. It irritated Marcus Aurelius a lot, and he really missed that advice when his mentor was gone. It was either Marcus Aurelius or someone else. I would have to go back and re-listen to the whole chapter. But that is a great technique to use to help calm yourself, and then to give yourself pragmatic advice. And then I conclude with the reality that my backlog is so jam-packed that I would put my money where my mouth is on this game. I try to buy games when I'm about to play them. Look, we all tell ourselves that lie. We all keep expanding our backlog, so, you can't judge me too harshly. Actually, go ahead and judge me too harshly. It doesn't really matter. My backlog will grow, your backlog will grow, and the backlogs will continue to expand the universe. Or something like that. I don't know, I didn't pay attention. Did I get banned? No. He thanked me for my advice. Admitted like he wasn't being professional. And then he's not too worried about it. And I gave him a bit more advice, because I love forming complex thoughts. Like, I'm not trying to act like I'm better than anyone. This is, in many times, my ideal of relaxation. So, basically, when you're talking to people, you're never going to convince these morons. They're not convincible. They're probably there for bad faith, be douchebags, to stir up trouble, all that jazz. They're going to have their cadre of bad faith actors with them, too. Which, if you ever want to shut someone up on Twitter, well, until they blocked likes, this actually technique worked a lot. When I was arguing with Marxists on Twitter, and they would have these random people come in and start upvoting their stuff, I'd block the people randomly upvoting their stuff, Depending if I thought their point had a point or not, right? If it was a solid point, makes sense they got upvoted. But if you I saw someone go through line by line, and every comment they made that got upvoted, mine didn't get no upvotes, I'd block that person. And you know what happened real quick? These people would stop responding to you. Because their little brigade of negative people couldn't signal boost them with positive upvotes. But when you're in a discussion, a lot of times you're not trying to convince the person. You're responding to that person. You're trying to convince the people who may see your response. Because you're not going to convince these bad faith actors like, that review, like this guy. You're not going to convince this guy. He's a douchebag. Gomario is never going to be convinced. But people who see you calmly address his claims can be convinced. And no, that's some outsider coming in and, the advice wasn't asked for. And there are plenty of developers who would say, like, hey, look, I'm ego tripping. Fuck you. Banned. I'm not banned. So he is not removing threads that are critical of him. Because in a way, you could take the advice, if the advice has to be given, the opposite part, to imply offense. I'm not trying to, but, you can imply that. And ban someone. Like, there's plenty of ego-tripping devs that would wholesale ban me. So if he's thanking me for advice that he didn't ask for, he's clearly just proving with that action alone that he's not getting rid of criticism. Now, it's just really unfair that a dev like this gets attacked. The game is not $10. It's actually $9.59. It'll be $12 when not in sale. This is not like some $60, $70 game. It's an indie survival game. It has a demo. Give it a chance. If you like the demo, buy the game. Maybe it does have some performance issues. One guy did complain. And the dev did say, like, hey, update your drivers. I'm not gonna lie, that actually does come a lot. But notice that, by the way, I clicked on show all reviews. Like, there's only 4 written reviews. Actually, we'll just do that again. See, like, there's only 4 written reviews. Notice, though, the reviews recommending the game actually played a decent chunk of the game. The reviews telling you it's a dog shit game have very little time. Now, I am not going to outright tell you have to play a whole game to know that you hate it. That's like telling someone they need to burn alive in order to know that fire sucks and getting burned alive sucks. Nah, I mean, just getting a minor burn is enough to tell me I probably don't want to burn alive. My evolutionary mechanism in my brain actually functions, so, I get that. Yeah, I'm not going to try to tell you that stuff. But I will say, when I see something potentially bad faith, the amount of time you've put into that game is something worth considering. It's just not definitive. For example, if this guy's computer can't run the game, I mean, I would probably not be happy about that either. To be fair, when my computer sucked, I didn't buy games my computer couldn't run. And it really depressed me when I saw a game I would actually like to try, and my computer couldn't run it. And then a lot of games I did want to play, my computer couldn't run well enough to actually justify it. That's why you would see a lot of my gameplay coming from my Xbox Series X, and now you're seeing more PC gameplay. Hence my Story Wolf playthrough, instead of chipping away at my ever-growing backlog. Because I will probably dump 200 to 500 hours into Story Wolf. Probably going to be all I play this month. And then next month will come out, and I'm going to have to get Silent Hill F, and the backlog will grow. Like The Factory. And I really got to play Factorio too. But I also have Satisfactoria to play, So before I would ever consider getting Factorio, the GOAT, the OG, I'm going to have to play Satisfactoria first. Which will probably be another 40 to 100 plus hours because I really do like factory games. Or at least I did with that one game, and that game wasn't even complete. It was on Game Pass. I forget what it was. Originally, it was supposed to be this game where you get to explore this alien planet, and then they just lopped all the levels together, got rid of the generation mechanisms, and just abandoned the game without even a proper ending. Depressing. Give Emprise 2 a check out. Just out of spite to these, I don't even know what their problem is. And here's the biggest FU to this whole saga. Had this developer used AI to generate all of his assets, he would have been hated on for that. So unless he spends tens to hundreds of thousands hiring a team or an individual to help make all these graphics, he's getting hated on. And that's just stupid. Let me know what you think about this. Let me know if you give this game a shot and what you think about it. Might not be your cup of tea, but, check it out. Because this is frankly ridiculous. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.